Born Patrice Lumumba Malcolm O'Neill on December 7, 1969, in New York City, he was named after the Congolese leader Patrice Lumumba, a symbol of anti-colonial resistance. From the outset, his life was marked by a fierce independence and a strong sense of justice, traits that would later define his approach to comedy. Raised by a single mother, Georgia, in the tough Roxbury neighborhood of Boston, O'Neill's childhood was far from easy. He grew up in a world where survival required both strength and wit, and it was in this crucible that his comedic voice began to take shape. As a child, O'Neill was a natural performer, often using humor as a defense mechanism against the harsh realities of his environment. He was a gifted storyteller, able to weave intricate narratives that were as entertaining as they were insightful. But his early years were also marked by a sense of alienation. He was often at odds with the world around him, a feeling that would later fuel much of his comedy. O'Neill's first foray into comedy came almost by accident. After a stint playing football in high school, he found himself drawn to the stage, where he could channel his frustrations and observations into something creative. His first performances were raw and unpolished, but they revealed a talent that was impossible to ignore. He quickly became a regular at Boston's open mic nights, where he began to develop the style that would later make him famous, a blend of brutal honesty, sharp social commentary, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. O'Neill's early career was anything but smooth. Despite his undeniable talent, he struggled to find his place in an industry that often seemed more interested in marketable personas than authentic voices. He moved to New York City in the early 1990s, hoping to break into the comedy scene there, but found the transition challenging. New York was a city full of talented comedians, many of whom were vying for the same opportunities, and O'Neill quickly realized that success would not come easily. In New York, O'Neill became a fixture at the Comedy Cellar, one of the city's most respected comedy clubs. It was here that he began to hone his craft, developing the voice that would later set him apart from his peers. His comedy was unlike anything else on the scene at the time, raw, unapologetic, and deeply personal. He tackled subjects that others avoided, race, gender, power dynamics, with a fearlessness that was both captivating and unsettling. But O'Neill's refusal to conform to the industry's expectations also made his rise to fame slower than it might have been. He was often described as difficult to work with, a label that stemmed from his unwillingness to compromise his artistic integrity. He turned down numerous opportunities that he felt would dilute his voice or betray his principles, a stance that earned him respect among his peers but also limited his mainstream appeal. Despite these challenges, O'Neill began to gain national attention in the early 2000s. His appearances on Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn showcased his ability to dominate any conversation, blending humor with keen insights on social and political issues. He became a regular guest on the Opie and Anthony Show, where his candid discussions about race, relationships, and societal norms resonated with a wide audience. O'Neill's appearances on these platforms were often polarizing, but they also cemented his reputation as one of the most intellectually rigorous and fearlessly honest comedians of his generation. What set Patrice O'Neill apart from other comedians was his unwavering commitment to truth-telling, no matter how uncomfortable or controversial it might be. His comedy was not for the faint of heart, it was an unflinching exploration of the human condition, often revealing the hypocrisies and contradictions that many would rather ignore. O'Neill had a unique ability to take taboo subjects and present them in a way that was both thought-provoking and hilarious. At the heart of O'Neill's comedy was a deep skepticism of societal norms and a relentless questioning of authority. He often spoke about the power dynamics between men and women, the complexities of race relations in America, and the absurdities of the entertainment industry. His observations were often biting, but they were also rooted in a profound sense of empathy and understanding. O'Neill didn't just critique the world around him, he offered a mirror for audiences to see themselves in all their flawed humanity. One of O'Neill's most famous bits, "The Elephant in the Room," perfectly encapsulates his approach to comedy. In this routine, he addresses the unspoken tensions and awkward truths that people are often too afraid to acknowledge. Whether discussing the differences between men and women or the challenges of navigating a racially divided society, O'Neill's comedy was always rooted in a desire to spark conversation and challenge the status quo. But O'Neill's refusal to shy away from controversy also made him a polarizing figure. Some audiences found his material too abrasive, while others were put off by his willingness to tackle subjects that were considered off-limits. Yet for those who appreciated his style, O'Neill was a breath of fresh air in a comedy landscape that often felt sanitized and safe. He was a comedian who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, even if it meant alienating some of his audience. Behind the laughter and the bravado, Patrice O'Neill was a man beset by personal challenges. Chief among these was his battle with diabetes, a disease that he had been diagnosed with in his 20s. O'Neill's relationship with his illness was complicated. While he acknowledged its severity, he was also notoriously lax in managing it. He continued to indulge in unhealthy eating habits, despite knowing the risks, and his weight fluctuated dramatically over the years. O'Neill's struggle with diabetes was compounded by his difficult personality. He was known for being fiercely independent and often clashed with those who tried to impose their will on him. This trait, while admirable in many respects, also led to strained relationships with industry insiders and fellow comedians. O'Neill was a man who valued honesty above all else, and he had little patience for the politicking and superficiality that often characterized the entertainment business. Yet despite his reputation as a difficult personality, O'Neill was deeply respected by those who knew him well. He was known for his generosity and willingness to mentor younger comedians, often offering advice and support to those just starting out in the industry. He was also fiercely loyal to his friends and had a tight-knit circle of people who admired him not just for his comedic talents but for his integrity and character. However, the combination of his health issues and his uncompromising nature took a toll on his career. While O'Neill continued to perform and tour, his opportunities for mainstream success were limited. He turned down numerous roles on projects that he felt did not align with his artistic vision, and as a result, he never achieved the level of fame that many of his contemporaries did. But for O'Neill, success was not measured in terms of money or accolades, it was about staying true to himself and his craft. In October 2011, Patrice O'Neill's life took a tragic turn. He suffered a massive stroke, a consequence of complications from his diabetes, that left him in a severely weakened state. The stroke robbed O'Neill of his ability to speak, a devastating blow for a man whose entire life had been centered around his voice. Despite his family's hopes for a recovery, it quickly became clear that O'Neill's condition was dire. On November 29, 2011, Patrice O'Neill passed away at the age of 41. His death sent shockwaves through the comedy community, as fellow comedians and fans alike mourned the loss of a truly unique voice. For many, O'Neill's passing felt like the end of an era. He was a comedian who had refused to compromise, who had spoken truth to power, and who had done so with a wit and intelligence that were unmatched. O'Neill's death was a stark reminder of the toll that diabetes can take, especially when it is not properly managed. It also highlighted the fragility of life and the ways in which even the most vibrant and larger-than-life personalities can be brought low by illness. But while O'Neill's life was cut short, his impact on comedy continues to be felt.